If we can remember 2022 for one thing, it's the crazy high prices of all goods and services. But how did we end up to these levels? Well, the answer is short but messy. Inflation. Or maybe it was the pandemic. And what about the energy crisis? In today's video, we will discuss the reasons that have led to an overall increase to all consumer goods and services and further analyze them. First things first, what has been trending all around the news is one word: inflation. So why is everyone so worried about high inflation rates, and what's inflation? Unfortunately, the previous years have been harsh to many countries. For these reasons, countries were forced to print money or borrow in order to cover any expenses that occurred. Both events led to more money circulating into the market, which is one of the main reasons we see inflation today. Simply put, inflation is the annual increase of prices for goods compared to last year. It is considered healthy for an economy to have a low inflation rate. The targeted inflation rate set by most governments is 2%, which means that each year products and services are 2% more expensive than last year. Such a small increase in the prices is helping companies develop, but also don't have such a great impact in consumers' purchasing power, taking into consideration that yearly or every 2 years, consumers have an increase in their salary. The main problem with the current situation is that inflation is way more than 2%. Most developed countries have seen inflation reach more or less 10%. For example, the most powerful European countries like Germany, England, and Spain have had inflation rates of 10%, 11%, and 11% respectively. Smaller countries like Estonia or Kosovo had faced crazy inflation rates of 25% and 20% respectively. But these numbers are considered small when compared to the unimaginable numbers Latin American countries faced. Argentina's inflation rate was 99%. Venezuela's inflation was 340%. That literally means that products were 3 times more expensive compared to last year. That's the reason governments want to keep inflation very low, because the damage high inflation can cause to people's lives is very serious. Other reasons that have affected the increase of prices is the war in Ukraine. Russia's invasion to Ukraine has forced the European Union to cut ties with them, and the response of Putin was to cut down the supply of oil and gas. Based on the law of supply and demand, when the demand is high and the supply is low, the prices tend to increase. For goods and services that are needed for humans to survive, like natural gas to warm up the houses, people will pay more to purchase them. But that's not all. Not only households use natural gas and oil. Companies and factories are the major players that consume it. Higher energy prices mean that companies have a dilemma to face: either increase their prices in order to absorb the cost or reduce their profit margin. And that's what Russia has achieved with the strategy of cutting down the supply. Russia is aware of the importance of their natural resources, and they technically increased their prices to respond to the economic sanctions. Now, the European Union is forced to either purchase way more expensive gas and oil from Russia or find alternatives which doesn't guarantee a better price. Finally, the reason that has begun the snowball of price increase is COVID-19. The recent pandemic has created 2 serious problems. The first is the shortage of raw materials. With ports being closed and transportation companies either closing or working with less people, there was a serious disruption in delivery times. That delay was translated into companies offering less of their products as they were forced to produce less. The second problem was the damage in the workforce. Many foreigners had to leave the country at which they were working at, since they couldn't work and afford the monthly expenses. By the time the first quarantine was over, these people didn't go back to their work, which created a huge gap in economies. Companies, especially local ones, were in great need of workforce. For example, in countries like the UK, there was a huge issue with a lack of drivers for big trucks. Missing people in crucial positions slowed down the economy way more than it was expected. Again, based on the law of supply and demand, when companies produce less, meaning that supply is lower and the demand was increasing as people were spending more and more time at home and were buying stuff, it led to an increase of prices. Unfortunately, the only part of the society that is facing difficulties with the current situation are the middle and lower cluster of citizens. When salaries don't follow the trend of inflation, people are getting poorer without knowing. We would like to share our opinion for this matter, but that's just our opinion. We are not financial advisors, and everything shared at this channel is our personal opinion and not an investment advice. We strongly believe that the inflation period isn't over. All these events have created a storm of economic turbulences, and there isn't a sign of cooling off anytime soon. The European Central Bank and the Fed have increased the interest rates multiple times during the previous year, but the outcome until today isn't the one they were expecting. And although all these actions, inflation is still here. Normally, an economic cycle has 4 stages: the expansion, during which there is a rapid economic growth, and the peak, during which the economy has reached the maximum level based on the current capacity. After these targets, we have contraction, a period where growth slows, employment falls, prices stagnate, and demand begins to fall. Finally, we have trough, which is the lowest point hit by the economy, with supply and demand hitting rock bottom. The only good news is that after that point, the next event is the beginning of a new cycle, which means growth and expansion. Currently, we are between stage 3 and 4. We don't know yet if we have reached the bottom of it or the economies are still slowing down, and that's what causes all that chaos. Our opinion is that we are not yet done with contraction. Only recently, the Silicon Valley Bank in the United States went bankrupt, literally destroying the savings of many companies and startups, and we don't know if more are going to follow. So there is a long road ahead. Buckle up. Thank you for staying with us until the end of the video. Liking it will help us keep up producing quality content, and subscribing is a must if you want to know when the next video will be uploaded. What's your opinion for the current economic situation? Has the situation changed your consuming habits? Let us know in the comments.